Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Just having fun with a mod there. Mod's making all sorts of silly faces at me there. See, I'm in a booth here. I'm in this big studio here, and I got this double pane glass, and I can see Ahmad, and I can see Rachel, and got a beautiful view outside. But we can't hear each other. We just kind of, make faces at each other. It's kind of fun. Anyway, glad you could be here. I am Dr. Joe Esposito, and what we're going to talk about today, something we all have, and something we only take care of, and that's our brains. Some people have less brains than others, as it turns out in life. But we're going to talk about bad habits that you do that are hurting your brain. Now, as a chiropractor, my job is to make sure the messages are getting from your brain down your spine, out to your body, and back up again. That's what we chiropractors do. And we can do that physically. There can be problems physically. They could have pinched nerves or muscle spasms blocking the messages from the brain to the body. Or it could be chemical. Because those nerve impulses that travel from the brain to the body are nothing but electrical impulses. And what happens is you have sodium and potassium on the inside and the outside of the nerve cell, and they switch back and forth. And when they switch back and forth, they generate an electrical pulse, and that's what a nerve impulse is. So you have to have the proper chemistry in order to produce the electrical impulse to make the nerves work. And so many times, people don't have the right chemistry. And that comes from nutrition. So in my offices, I always try to check the nutrition of the patient, the chemistry of the patient, along with the physical problems. Because we can give you the best chiropractic care in the world. And anyone could, if you go to the best chiropractor in the world and they give you the best chiropractic care. But if you're not giving the body the chemistry that it needs to create the sodium, potassium nerve impulses to occur, the action potentials, you can't function. And so we have to have the physical and the chemical. So I'm going to go through a couple of things that you're doing every day that are hurting your brain. Because if you come in as my patient, I want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to get well. We'll give you the physical stuff that we can to get you well. And now you have a healthcare plan. Most people don't have a healthcare plan. Most people have health insurance, but most people don't have a healthcare plan. And so when patients come in all the time, I'll say to them, "What's your plan?" "I don't know. I got no plan." So let's put together a plan for you. Number one, you miss out on too much sleep. How many people don't get enough sleep? Raise your hands. Everyone who works in radio and television is going to raise their hand. Now, we do a few things we know we shouldn't. We all do. But some of the bad habits really take a toll on your brain. So if you're not getting enough sleep, it can lead to things like dementia, Alzheimer's, really the bad stuff. And it's best if you have regular sleeping hours. Now, if you have trouble sleeping, a couple of things. You want to avoid alcohol. When I talk about my 7 deadly sins of nutrition, the 7 foods you want to avoid, alcohol is one of them for many reasons. But alcohol, if you get drunk enough, and we've probably all done this at some time in our lives, we think we're going to go to sleep. You don't go to sleep, you pass out. And you don't wake up, you come to. And so you're not really getting a good deep sleep. So try to stay away from the alcohol. The other thing with alcohol is a diuretic, which means what? It makes you pee. And so if you drink a lot of alcohol, you got to get up and pee, which then disrupts your smooth sleep. Caffeine and other stimulants, aspartic acid, which is artificial sweetener. A lot of people don't think about this. Glutamic acid, mainly found in monosodium glutamate. So glutamic acid, aspartic acid, and caffeine stimulate the brain. Well, aspartic acid and glutamic acid do. Caffeine doesn't really give you energy. You have a chemical in your brain called adenosine. Now, adenosine is released, and it's absorbed in something called the adenosine receptor sites. And that's where adenosine gets absorbed. And adenosine makes you tired. Well, what happens is if you drink caffeine, caffeine looks like adenosine. So it blocks up your adenosine receptor sites. You can't absorb the adenosine, so you don't get tired. So caffeine doesn't give you energy. It just prevents you from getting tired. So your body is much smarter than you. So what your body does is your body says, "Yeah, wait a minute here, Joe. I need to get rest. You don't give me enough rest. And so I'm going to produce more adenosine receptor sites. And so now I have to drink more caffeine." Not me, because I don't drink caffeine. But you have to drink more caffeine to block up those adenosine receptor sites so you don't get tired. And that's why when you started out with 1 cup of coffee, and then you went to 2 and 3 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10. I know a lot of you do it because I see you in my offices. How's your coffee intake? "Oh, doc, don't take away my coffee." But if the brain isn't resting, it can't heal. It needs to essentially reboot itself. And that's not a good thing. So if you're going to get some good sleep, make sure you have good sleeping arrangements. You want to make sure it's as dark as possible. Now, some of you work weird shifts. I know that because you tell me all the time you work weird shifts. Maybe you work in a hospital, and maybe you work in a radio station. Maybe you work for an airline, and you work in weird shifts. Whatever room you're going to sleep in, put up some blackout curtains. You can buy them anywhere, nice dark curtains. And if it's still not dark enough, get yourself a mask. You can go to a drugstore for $5, get yourself a fancy little mask, and that'll prevent light from getting into your eyes, and that can get into your brain and wake you up. The other thing you want to have is silence. Some people can sleep through noise. I can't. So if there's any noise, you might want to consider earplugs as well. And the other thing we talked about with alcohol is don't drink too much fluids, especially if you're getting older. And if you can't hold your urine throughout the night, maybe stop drinking your big fluids around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You can have a sip or two here or there, but that's going to help tremendously. Because if you wake up in the middle of the night, we've all done this, you lay in bed going, it'll go away. It's not going to go away. If you got to pee, you got to pee. And so get up. And now if you can't sleep, after 20 minutes and you're not asleep, it's a good idea to get up. Change your environment. I remember being a little kid, if I couldn't sleep, my mother would come, get me out of bed, make my bed, pull the sheets back down, and put me back in. Now, I don't think she understood what she was doing, but that's what scientists recommend, is change your environment. And temperature is real important. 68 to 72 degrees is perfect sleeping temperature. So if it's too hot or too cold, chances are you're not going to get a good night's sleep. Folks, got to go to a break. I'm going to open up the phone lines because I know a lot of you always wait for the phone lines to open up so you can call. If you have a healthcare question, give us a call. The number is 844-44-DR-JOE, D-R-J-O-E, 844-44-DR-JOE. My website, drjoeesposito.com. We archive all my radio shows, my live lectures. A great place to go. And I'm going to talk about why that can be a place to make your brain work, why my website can actually help your brain. Hey, folks, I'm Dr. Joe Esposito. Tell your friends about the show. We'll be right back. Tell your friends. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Glad you could be here. We're talking today about bad habits that you do that are hurting your brain. Another one we have that can affect the brain, and this is a biggie because I see this a lot, especially with my elderly patients, is we spend too much time alone. We humans are gregarious. That means we're kind of wired to have social contact. It's not about how many Facebook friends you have. It really is about how many people you can actually be with. People who have not been with folk, in a good way, don't hang out with people, sometimes get very lonely and their brain starts to shut down. The brain needs to be stimulated on a regular basis. And if they have a few close friends or family members they can be with, they're going to be a lot more productive. They're also less likely to suffer from brain decline and Alzheimer's. So if you feel like you're alone and you got kind of getting bored, and sometimes it's okay to have a little quiet time, you might want to consider getting out and doing something. I know one of my elderly patients, she can't get around very well. And me and her daughter have said, well, what do you do? She goes, well, what can you do? And I said, well, she can go to church. I said, okay, when do you go to church? Wednesdays and Sundays. Perfect. What else does the church offer? Well, they offer social meetings. And I said, okay, do you go to social meetings? And it's taken us several weeks, but we finally got her mom to start going out to these events. And you can see the difference in her. She's smiling. She has more energy. She's perky. She's effervescent. And so we need to have social contact. Now, if you don't have friends, if you're new to town, look at meetup groups. This is something that's kind of a new phenomenon with the internet. And just look up a meetup and pick a topic that you like. Like if you're a vegetarian, there's tons of vegetarian meetup groups. There's hiking groups. There's biking groups. There's probably quilting groups. Who knows? But you can go to a meetup group, and there are people who are there looking for other social contact as well. And this is a big thing with seniors. Most of the seniors that I know want to have more friends. But they say, well, I don't know where to meet them. Well, here they are, a bunch of seniors all wanting more friends and not knowing where to go. So if you're up and driving and mobile, that's great. If you're not, a lot of towns have senior citizen buses. They'll pick you up, take you to senior groups. But it's so important that we have social contact. And that's why I see sometimes when folks retire, they'll say, I got nothing to do. I'm not talking to people anymore. And they may just pick up a job, retail job somewhere, just to have human contact. So social contact is real important for brain function. Another thing that people do to destroy their brains is, of course, they eat too much junk food. Now, parts of the brain linked to learning, memory, and mental health are smaller, physically smaller, in people who eat a lot of what I call the 7 deadly sins: alcohol, meat, sugar, dairy, coffee, soda, and artificial sweeteners. So if you're eating the 7 deadly sins of nutrition, the alcohol, meat, sugar, dairy, coffee, soda, artificial sweetener, parts of your brain can actually start to shrink. So you want to eat more fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. What happens then is you preserve brain function, and it slows down mental decline. So instead of reaching for that bag of potato chips, maybe have a few handfuls of nuts. Take at least, I say this every show, at least take Dr. Joe's Super Greens and Dr. Joe's Essential Source. People ask me all the time, and not to blow my own horn, but even my bosses here at the station, they say, your brain is so quick. It's so fast, it just goes on and on. You answer questions, you don't know what the question's going to be. You can do lectures for hours without notes. How do you do that? I'm not a young kid anymore. One of the reasons is because I give my body the chemistry that it needs to function normally. And I created Dr. Joe's Super Greens and Dr. Joe's Essential Source as the minimum amount of nutrients you should be taking every single day. If you don't know what they are, if you're new to the show, they're 2 powders. I take a scoop of each. I mix it with coconut milk, almond milk, and I just put it in a jar and shake it up. And I have that at least once a day. Now, if I've got a big lecture coming up, if I'm speaking at a conference, if I got to travel, if I've got a date, if I'm going hiking, I'll take a double dose. I'll take it twice a day. And it's amazing how much energy it gives you and how clear your brain starts to work when you give the brain the chemistry that it needs to work. So at least take Dr. Joe's Super Greens and Dr. Joe's Essential Source every day, and I hope you do a good diet, and I hope you get your nervous system checked, because the nervous system physically can be interrupted, and chemically, of course, can be interrupted. And if you got your nervous system working, your digestive system working, and a good diet, you've got an almost unstoppable plan. It's pretty cool. Now, I want you to try to stay away from sugar, because if you eat a lot of sugar, your pancreas releases something called insulin. And insulin tells the cells to open up and accept the glucose, the form of sugar your body uses as fuel, to utilize the fuel. If you eat too much sugar, your body produces too much insulin, and the cells become insulin resistant. Now, I've talked about that on many shows, but if it happens in the brain, if the brain becomes insulin resistant, it's now called type 3 diabetes. Type 1 is your pancreas isn't making insulin. Type 2 is your cells in your body aren't allowing the insulin to open up the cells and allow sugar in. And type 3 is when the brain isn't working anymore. And there's a really good book on Alzheimer's. It's written by a medical doctor, and she wrote it about her husband, and it's called What If There Was a Cure? And she found that her husband had developed this type 3 diabetes, things we talk about all the time. And so she said, if it can't use sugar, can't use glucose as a fuel, what else can the brain use as a fuel? And the brain can use ketones as a secondary fuel. And ketones come from fat. So she started getting her husband off the sugar and onto a coconut oil. I think it was 2 tablespoons a day of extra virgin organic coconut oil. And she started charting his progress. And he started to get better. So it's really cool when you stop giving the brain so much sugar to use as fuel and start giving it ketones. So increasing your fat intake is what that boils down to. The brain is able to go into a state of ketosis and utilize the ketones more efficiently. And it's pretty amazing when you do that. When you cut out the sugar, the breads, cookies, cakes, donuts, and pastas, and start eating healthy fats, extra virgin olive oil, olives, coconut oil, nuts, seeds, avocados, the brain is going to work so much more effectively. And I see this all day, every day with the patients that do it. Some people just won't do it. But most of my patients come to me and they say, listen, I want to get better, Dr. Joe. I have neck pain. I was in a car accident. I've never seen a car damaged where the occupants weren't, ever. So if you were ever in a car accident, you need to get your spine checked. But they come to me and say, Doc, I want you to check my spine and I want you to work on my nutrition. And I'll ask them, I said, you serious? You want me to, I'll give you everything, but are you serious you want to do it? Most of them say, yes, absolutely. That's why I'm here. And when they do it, the response is unbelievable. I don't think there's ever been a patient that did everything I said and said, boy, that was stupid. I wish I'd never done that. They have more energy. They lose weight. Their love life improves. They go to the bathroom better. Their brain works better. I have something called macular degeneration. I was going blind. And I started taking Dr. Joe's Super Greens and Dr. Joe's Essential Source. And then a year and a half or 2 years later, I had my eyes checked again. I was 60% better. My eyes were healing from something that's not healable according to typical orthodox medicine. And my eyes continue to get better. And so that's why I made Super Greens an essential source, to make it as easy as possible for you so that you can't say, well, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the energy, I don't have the knowledge. I put it in a powder form. I don't know how to make it any better. And then we improve your diet. And then we check your nervous system, and now you have a healthcare plan. Folks, if you have a question, I'm going to open up the phone lines, 844-44-DR-JOE, 844-44-DRJOE. My website, we archive radio shows. You can book appointments, send me questions, drjoeesposito.com, or just Google Dr. Joe. If you have a question, you can send me through my Facebook as well, just Facebook/Dr. Joe Esposito. Hey, tell your friends about the show. We'll be right back. Hey, folks, Dr. Joe Esposito here. Just having fun with Ahmad. As usual, it's always so much fun to work with Ahmad and Rachel. We're just having a good time here. We're talking today about things that you do that can be damaging your brain. And most of us do things all day, every day that's doing that. And then as we get older, we say, oh, I just had a senior moment, or oh, I forgot something, or then it gets worse. It starts developing Alzheimer's, and you start saying, wow, I'm really shocked that I or grandma or whoever has Alzheimer's. Well, then you look back and you say, well, wait a minute. They did all the things that Dr. Joe's talking about today that led to it. So it's not surprising if you do these things, you'll have the results that most people have. It's like when people come to us for chiropractic care, for nutrition, and they get the chiropractic treatment that we recommend, and or they get the nutrition, and they'll come back and they say, you know, it's amazing. I have so much more energy. I feel so much better, and my pain went away, and my headaches are gone. Why didn't I do this sooner? So if you do certain things, they're time-tested to show positive or negative results. So stop doing the things that are causing problems. A new thing that we're seeing a lot of lately, I see this a lot with the younger kids especially, is they have their earbuds on full volume, and that can damage your hearing in only about 30 minutes. Now, it's not just about your ears. Hearing loss in older people are linked to brain problems such as Alzheimer's and loss of parts of the brain tissue, because one way we stimulate the brain is through auditory input. Now, this may be because the brain has to work harder to understand what it's being said around them, and it can't store what it's heard in the memory because it's working so hard to try to just simply hear it. Turn it down no louder than 60% of your device's maximum volume, and try not to listen for more than a couple of hours at a time. So I'm not a big fan of headsets because that can cause problems, especially if it's blaring. So you might want to consider at least an earbud, because the earbud is not going to put as much volume in as a whole headset will, because it covers up the ear. Now, be careful with volume, because that can cause some real serious problems. So as we continue talking about things that you're doing to hurting your brain, is you don't move enough. The longer you go without regular exercise, the more likely you are to have things like dementia. You're also more likely to get diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, all these things that can be linked to Alzheimer's. So you don't have to start running marathons. Go out for a walk in the garden for a half hour. I know spring is here, and one of the things I like to do as an exercise is I like to go work in my garden. Get out there, pull weeds, plant. Now, a couple of benefits are, number one, you're exercising, you're getting sunlight, which is great. You need about 20 minutes of sunlight every day to give you about 20,000 international units of vitamin D, which has been shown to help the brain. But another benefit that you're out in the garden is, and I have organic gardens, of course I have organic gardens, no pesticides, is that you're touching the soil, which has a lot of good bacteria in it. And we find that when people garden, their bacteria levels can change in their body for the better. So make sure it's an organic garden. Make sure you're not touching toxic chemicals. I know I was out with a friend of mine the other day, and he was telling me about his one of the guys he works with, his handyman, and he has arsenic poisoning. And I said, how the heck did he get arsenic poisoning? He goes, well, he had rats at one of the properties he was working at, and he took the rat food and he sprinkled it all over the place with his hands, no gloves. And then he, when he find a dead rat, he just pick it up and throw it over the fence. I don't know what fence he was talking about. But this guy was exposing himself to arsenic, extremely high levels. And he was having heart palpitations. He was having digestive problems. He started getting sores on his body. And now the only treatment for that is it's going to take time to work its way out of the system. It's not something that's just going to work. It's going to, you can't give a pill to get rid of arsenic. It's going to take time to work it out of the system. So gardening is good, but make sure that you're doing it organic. And, just get out half hour, 3 days a week if you can. Go for a walk, work in the garden. But get the body in motion, because the body needs stimulation. The brain needs stimulation, oxygen, and nutrition. Those are the three things your brain needs to work properly. And if you get out there and work up a little bit of a sweat, you're going to get breathing. And that's going to help the oxygen. the stimulation. You know what? Just listening to this show is stimulating for your brain. Because we always throw out new things. I've had for people that listen to shows for years, and even Ahmad, who listens to listen to every show I've ever done. He'll say to me all the time, every show I hear something I never heard before. So just listening to the show today, and you can listen to the archive shows on my website, is a great exercise for your brain. And so instead of listening to music, go to my website, drjoeesposito.com, which is Google Dr. Joe. We're the number one Dr. Joe in the world. And we'll come up first, and we have hundreds and hundreds of hours of radio shows archived. No charge. Listen to them at no charge. I videotape my live lectures. So if you're an auditory person, that's great. If you're a visual person, you can watch the videos of my lectures. No charge. It's all on the website. And so here you get to learn new things. You may say, well, Dr. Joe, I've heard you talk about this and this and this a couple of times, but I didn't hear you talk about this. I didn't hear you talk about that. And so each time you listen, the brain is actually growing new connections because you're learning something new. So there, I give you an excellent exercise, no charge, on the website, drjoeesposito.com. Oh, by the way, if you have questions too, you can send them me through the website, drjoeesposito.com, or you can send me through Facebook. And Ahmad, it's your turn.
Yay. I've been waiting for this all evening.
I bet you have. The highlight of your day, right?
That's right. All right, so our question today is from Adam, and he says, Dr. Joe, you are absolutely the smartest person I have ever known.
Well, I like Adam. He's my new best friend.
He's a smart guy himself. I am having foot pains plus heel spurs. Do you have any solutions?
Yeah, when you have foot pain and heel spurs, Adam, if you're listening, and by the way, Adam sent that through me through Facebook, and you could just send it through Facebook. Like me on Facebook, too, by the way, and we'll send out cool information, Facebook/Dr. Joe Esposito. And you want to know about heel pain and foot pain and spurs. And what happens is 1/4 of all, 1/4 of all the bones in your body are in your feet. So your foot is an amazing, think about this, how amazing it is. It supports your entire body weight, and it lets you dance and rollerblade and walk, stand. It's amazing how many nerve endings are in the foot and how many bones are in the foot. 206 bones, 1/4 of them are in your feet. So what's that, 25, 50, 60 bones or something like that? And so any one of those bones can come out of place. And if a bone comes out of place, it can throw off your gait. Your gait is how you walk. And that can throw out your knee, which can throw your neck out of place, your low back out of place. I've had people with headaches for years. And they've been to chiropractors, got their neck adjusted, physical therapy, had injections in their neck, wasn't helping. Went in there and started adjusting their feet. It stabilized the entire skeletal system, and the headaches went away. So the feet are so important. So if you're having foot pain and spurs are telling me that the bones are out of place, and we're pulling on the ligaments, and the body's laying down calcium along the tendon or the ligament. And what happens is you get a bone spur. And so when we put the bones back in place, we take the stress off the tendons and ligaments, and the foot returns to normal motion and normal function. And so the foot pain or the bone spurs, Adam, are actually a symptom, most likely, that your feet are out of place. So get your feet put back in place. Folks, I'm Dr. Joe Esposito. If you have a healthcare question, give us a call, 844-44-DR-JOE. That number, by the way, rings through to my office when I'm not on the air. If you want to get Dr. Joe's Super Greens, Dr. Joe's Essential Source, you can get them on the website, drjoeesposito.com, along with my books, my other supplements, and they're also available on Amazon. If you have an Amazon account, it might be easier. Folks, I'm Dr. Joe Esposito. Tell your friends about the show. We're going to be right back. Tell your friends about the show. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate you taking time out of your day. And we're talking today about habits that you have that are causing your brain to not work at 100% of its capabilities. So one of the things, too, I was surprised, to be honest with you. I was out the other day, and gosh, what was I? I can't remember. And somebody was smoking. And I thought, people still smoke? It kind of blew me away, because I guess in my world, I don't know anyone who still does that. But if you still smoke, you need to stop. I used to say you get 100 billion free radicals every time you take a puff of cigarettes. Now, free radical is kind of like Pac-Man. It's a molecule that's very active and can eat away at whatever, the cells or the brain, whatever. And I used to say 100 billion, and I was wrong. It's 100 trillion free radicals per puff. So you really want to stop smoking. Now, something I found, and I've worked with a lot of people with addiction in the 32 years I've been in practice, 32 plus years now, is that every person I've ever met who was an addict was malnourished. Now, the question comes in, and I don't know this answer. This is my rhetorical question here. did the malnourishment or the undernourishment cause them to reach out to get outside stimulus for the body because it wasn't getting the nutrients that it needs, or vice versa? I don't know that. Did the addiction cause them to become malnourished? So what I found is when I start dealing with addicts, no matter what the addiction is, smoking, drinking, gambling, we want to get their digestive system working, because your digestive system helps produce neurotransmitters which go to the brain and give the brain pleasure, like dopamine, for example. So we want to get the body nourished, and we get them always on Dr. Joe's Super Greens and Dr. Joe's Essential Source. And everyone should be taking that, by the way, anyway. If you're not, shame on you. You should be taking it by now. And then I'll do a nutritional workup with them, and I'll see if there are other supplements. And usually we put them on, usually 5 or 6 different supplements. And then we get the nervous system working. We take the stress, the physical stress off the body. And then if the stomach has acid reflux, heartburn, burping, gas, bloating, and 100% of my addicts have this, by the way, we take the stomach and we massage it. We pull it down away from the diaphragm so that the stomach relaxes, so it can digest food more efficiently, so that it can produce neurotransmitters, and we don't need those external stimulus. So if you're a smoker, obviously you need to quit, but you need to consider, why am I reaching for this outside stimulation? Many times it's lack of nutrients, or it's a chemical stress, a physical stress on the body, like pinched nerves. I'm going to start taking some calls. If you have a question, 844-44 Dr. Joe. Is it Lizel?
Leslie?
Leslie, I'm sorry, Leslie. Okay. I saw Lisle. Yes, Leslie.
A little typo there.
That's right. How can we make your day better?
Well, I'm calling slightly off topic, but I listen to your show on Sunday nights when I'm driving home from work.
Good girl.
About 60 days ago, a lady called in. She had a metabolic disorder and was experiencing infertility or something.
Right.
You challenged her for 60 days to avoid the 7 deadly sins of eating, and said it might help with your metabolic disorder, and worst case scenario, it costs you nothing. You'll lose a few pounds. Okay, fine. Okay. I was sold. For 60 days, I've been eating, avoiding the 7 deadly sins of eating. I have not budged 1 pound.
Okay.
And I'm wondering what you might make of that and what your thoughts are.
Okay. Well, there can be unhealthy vegans too. The next step we have to do then is got to cut out the carbohydrates, because many times what happens is, and I don't know if this is you or not, you can tell me, you've given up the alcohol, meat, sugar, dairy, coffee, soda, and artificial sweetener, but then you start doing things like breads, cookies, cakes, donuts, pastas. We still doing those a little bit?
No, we're not doing
Good.
those.
Excellent. Okay. So then we have to start thinking, all right, what else am I putting in my body that can cause me to gain weight? And usually it's the carbohydrates. So rices, grains, have we switched to that?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay, so that might be, and that would be my next step, because I've been a vegan 30 years now, but I know I can't do a lot of grains. As soon as I start doing grains, man, those love handles pop up and the gut starts sticking out, and I'm like, I hate that. The older we are, too, Leslie, the harder it is to lose weight. That's just, my friends and I talk about that all the time. It's like, man, I could, I do everything I can to just maintain my weight. So let's cut out the grains and go more with fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, and let's see if that helps.
I will do it.
All right, let's give it a shot. I want to hear back from you in about 30 days. Let me know how you did.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. All right, let's keep taking some callers. Michelle, how can we make your day better?
Hi, Dr. Joe. This is Michelle. So I'm wondering if there is a homeopathic way, maybe diet-related, something you would be associated with, to cure papillary thyroid cancer. Instead of going the traditional medical route of surgery and radioactive iodine
Absolutely.
treatment.
Yeah, I'm very, very familiar with thyroid, believe me. Not a medical doctor, so I can't tell you I can cure anything. No one should say they can cure anything. But what I find works really well in cases like yours is we've got to get off the things that are affecting the thyroid adversely. And a couple of those things would be fluorine, chlorine, and bromine. So fluorinated water, fluorinated toothpaste, bromine, which is a bread conditioner. We use that in doughs. Fluorine, chlorine, and bromine. And again, you want to get a really, really good water filter that's going to filter out the chlorine and the fluorine. And I would recommend getting one for the whole house, because every time you shower, every time you bathe, or if there's water in your toilet, it's releasing chlorine into the air. Chlorine can block up the iodine receptor sites in the thyroid, and now the thyroid can't work properly. And so I'm not saying that's the cause of the cancer. I'm saying let's get you on a healthy thyroid protocol. And there are thyroid supplements that I put my patients on as well. You vegetarian?
No.
Okay, actually good, because there are certain thyroid supplements that work that contain animal products that seem to do very well. I would start testing my pH. Get some pH paper. You can get it at most drugstores or health food stores. First thing in the morning, first urine. Pee a little bit, wave the pH paper. It's a little tiny strip through the urine, and you want to measure it at 6.5 to 7.0. The closer to 7.0 you are, the better you're going to be. If you're below 6.5, that's when the body works in a very weird way. And every cancer patient I've ever worked with, and again, I'm not treating your cancer. Understand that. I got to make sure I cover myself, legally. But every cancer patient I've ever worked on, their pH is 6.5 or below. They're too acidic. So we alkalize the system. Dr. Joe's Super Greens, Dr. Joe's Essential Source, great for alkalizing the system. A lot of green leafy vegetables, great for alkalizing the system. And then we see if we can get everything in check. And so we get you on some good thyroid supplements. We get the system alkalized. Stay with your medical practitioner. Make sure we can monitor everything that's going on. And that would be the approach I would take if it were me.
Okay. And so are you saying that it could be possible, possibly possible that cancers can be reversed?
I've seen it happen many times, yes. But again, I got to make sure I tell you I'm not treating your cancer. But I've seen it happen many times, yes. Okay. Got to run to break, Michelle. Folks, if you have a question, 844-44-Dr. That number rings through to my office when I'm not on the air. My website, drjoeesposito.com. Hey, tell your friends about the show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Hey, everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for telling your friends about the show. Our listenership is just growing like crazy, and it's really because of you, because you're telling your friends and neighbors about it, and so I want to say thank you for all that. We're talking today about things that you're doing that can damage your brain. And something a lot of people don't think about is they overeat. Now, if you eat too much food, even if it's the right food, even if you're staying away from the 7 deadly sins of nutrition, alcohol, meat, sugar, dairy, coffee, soda, and artificial sweetener, you're eating fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, your brain may not be able to build strong networks of connections that help you think and remember, because when you overeat for too long, you may get dangerously overweight, which can cause heart disease, diabetes, blood pressure. And the brain and the stomach, let me back up to way back when mommy and daddy got romantic on that night that you were conceived, the first thing to happen was the sperm and the egg came together, and the first thing to form is the brain. So the cells divide and divide and divide, and you get the brain. Then the brain grows a little tail, and you look like a tadpole. And this little tail becomes your spinal cord. So the first thing to form is your brain and your spinal cord. And then off this little tail, you start growing little branches. And these branches become what's called your spinal nerves, and then on the end of the branch grows an arm, a leg, a foot, a lung, a liver, a spleen, a kidney. And it's really cool to watch as you go through step by step how the fetus forms. Then the body gets smart and it encases the brain and spinal cord in bone. Why? Because your brain and spinal cord are the most important organs in the body. We've figured out how to transplant just about everything except the brain and the spinal cord. So the brain and spinal cord are encased in bone to protect it. And so the brain and the spinal cord actually, then one of the things that forms from that is the digestive system connected by what's called the vagus nerve, V-A-G-U-S. And the vagus nerve and the brain come from the same type of cells. And so it really is a second brain in your gut. And in fact, there's more nerve endings in your digestive system than there are in your brain. So if you're overeating, you're putting a physical burden, and most people overeat bad food, so a chemical burden, on the digestive system, which really is your second brain. So I want you to do this. There's a couple of tricks I want you to do, and this is a great way to help lose weight as well. When you're hungry, you're not hungry for food, you're hungry for nutrition. And so if you eat a high nutritious diet, you're going to eat a lot less food. That's why I say Dr. Joe's Super Greens and Dr. Joe's Essential Source. It's the first thing I do in the morning. When I wake up, I'll take Super Greens and Essential Source, and if I want to get really crazy, I'll add like a tablespoon or two of coconut oil to it. Now, when the coconut oil hits the Super Greens, the Essential Source, I mix it with coconut milk or almond milk, it hardens. Remember that when you were a kid, you had those ice cream cones, and they were dipped in the red and the brown, and it created that crunchy coating on it? They used to use coconut oil for that. Now they use chemicals. But coconut oil hardens when it gets cold. So anyway, here and there, I just take it, I chew it up, and I swallow it. And boy, that's an amazing amount of nutrients. And now I'm not hungry for many hours. The other thing I want you to do is drink more water. I want you to have about an 8 to 10 ounce glass of water before every meal, and you'll be amazed how much less food you eat. Because many times when you're hungry, you're not hungry for food, you're hungry for nutrition. So that's a real good way to stop overeating, is to give your body the nutrients that it needs. That's why so many people say they take the super greens and essential source and they don't feel hungry, or as hungry, I should say. Let's go back to the callers. We got lots of callers here. Oh, we just had a good one. Just hung up on us. Lisa, how can we make your day better?
Hi, Dr. Joe.
Hi, Lisa.
We love listening to you. I have to just say that really quickly.
You're brilliant. Thank you.
I had 2 spinal fusions all the way from, let's see, goodness, C3 to T1. My husband had to remind me.
Oh, that's a lot of fusion, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just want to ask you the neuroscience as to why I am still hurting. I got in a car accident after the first fusion, 3 months after. So they had to go in and do it again, all the way down to the thoracic.
Wow.
But I wanted to ask you, that's a huge decision, and I wish I had gone chiropractic first before making such a huge,
I wish you had to. And a lot of smart surgeons now are sending us patients. We have several offices now, and they send us to our doctors and say, listen, you guys try to fix them first. And if you can't fix them, we can always do the surgery. But once you do the surgery, as you know, you're surgicalized, if that's a word. A lot of times what happens, Lisa, is the surgery might have been very successful. Now, I don't know this, but the surgery was successful, but then scar tissue started to form. And scar tissue can form and start to wrap around what's called the nerve root, right, as the nerve exits the spine. And many times that's the cause of the pain. The scar tissue that you can't stop scarring from happening. So what we do in cases like yours is when you come in, we mobilize the joints above and below the fusion. And when we do that, we can also do some trigger point work and try to break up some of that scar tissue. But a lot of times, and this is the other thing too, I have to warn everybody that 39% of MRIs are false positive. So what that means 1 in 3 or more than 1 in 3. So I have low back pain. I have an MRI. I'm one of the 3 people that shows positive for a disc rupture or disc bulge. Let's say disc rupture, more likely disc bulge. So they say you have back pain, you have a disc bulge. It's probably that. Well, I have a 1 in 3 shot of that not being it. And so they go in and do the surgery. And I'm not knocking the surgeons now, please. Some of my best friends are surgeons.
Right.
They do what they're taught to do, and it wasn't the problem. So if you want to come see us, we'd be more than happy to work with you, Lisa, and let's see if we can give you some relief, because chances are it's just going to get worse as time goes on.
Yeah, I just went out of the pain. That's why I did it originally, and I was actually,
All right, got to run, Lisa. Okay, thanks so much. Folks, got to run. Tell your friends about the show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Thanks for listening. Glad you could make it. Hope to teach you a few things today. You walk away with knowledge, as I try to do every time we get together, because I want to help you naturally get well and stay well. So what we're talking about today are things that you do that damage your brain. And one of the things, too, especially if you work weird shifts, is staying in the dark too much. If you don't get enough natural light, that can lead to things like depression. So research shows that sunlight helps get your brain working very well. So if you can't get out, you have weird hours, every chance you can, if it's weekends or if it's during the day, if you're on your way to work, at least drive with your windows down, put your arm out. If you have a sunroof, open your sunroof. Try to get some natural light. About 20 minutes a day is really going to help tremendously if you can get natural light on your skin, because that's going to help activate the cholesterol in your skin to help produce the cholesterol is going to activate and become vitamin D3, and vitamin D3 is really important for brain function. We got a lot of callers, so let's go back to the callers. Robert, how can we make your day better?
Hey, Dr. Joe, I love your show, man.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
I'm talking to you right now.
Well, it's my honor.
Look, years ago I ran track, and after school I actually would run road races and such.
Sure.
But what had happened was my arch in my foot fell, and now I have a flat foot.
Yeah.
But then my Achilles tendon, I have a reoccurring Achilles tendonitis. I got treated for it, but it's reoccurring. It's always coming back. Even if I go through all of the steps that I did to get rid of it now, I really need to figure out what's going on,
Okay. Well, we said earlier 1/4 of all the bones in your body are in your feet. And if you were a runner, you put a lot of stress on your feet. And those bones can move out of place, and the arch can drop. And if the arch drops, that puts a lot of abnormal stress all the way up your body, not just your foot. And so the Achilles tendon in the back of the heel there is getting that unnatural stress on it. And so chances are we'd have to work on getting your feet put back together again or adjusted back in place, and then take the stress off the Achilles tendon. But every case of tendonitis I've seen with the Achilles tendon, it's always the bones in the foot out of place.
Wow. Is that possible to get my arch back?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If, we can adjust it. Now, if there's too much ligament damage, we can get you in an arch support so that when you're walking, we create an arch for you, and that should take the stress off the Achilles tendon.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You're
Doc.
welcome. See, so many people like Robert suffer needlessly, and maybe you're one of them. You're suffering with neck pain or back pain or shoulder pain or bad digestive problems or a bad diet. You might as well just get it fixed. People suffer, and I always say, why are you suffering needlessly? Aren't you just sick and tired of being sick and tired? And patients, when they come in, say, Doc, I've been listening to you for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I've been reading your books. I've read your research. I've been following you. I've come into your lectures. And I finally decided it's time that I get well. And I have to laugh. And I said, it took you that long. You suffered all those years. And then they say, why didn't I do this sooner? And I don't know that answer. Scott, how can we make your day better?
Hi, Dr. Joe. Thank you so much for taking my call. You have the what I'm calling about, the CIPD.
Yes. You're talking about chronic
yeah,
inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, right?
Yeah, a dear friend just from my church group, she was talking about her brother's in his 60s, I believe, because their mother's in her 90s. It was recently, just after about a year, they got an appointment to a exclusive clinic. I won't divulge the
Thank you. Okay, good.
name, but that was the diagnosis. She's a small woman, but she says her brother's arms, or legs, are like the size of her arms. He's in a wheelchair and just extreme pain. They tried chiropractic for about a year before they went to more conventional approach. So, whatever you could offer as far as suggestions for her.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's an inflammatory disease. It's really rare. In fact, when you said it, I said I wanted to make sure we were talking about it. It's called chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. There's a myelin sheath that covers the nerve, and it acts as an insulator. And so the nerve impulses can be carried along the nerves, and this insulator kind of keeps everything in check. And as you start to eat away at this sheath, you demyelinate the sheath, and so the nerves are kind of exposed, and so the muscles become weak. Many times there's a lot of pain involved with this. And I've seen cases like this, and it's really a tough call. So a couple of things I would suggest. We got to get her on a really anti-inflammatory diet. So for her, a lot of raw foods, vegetables, fruits, a little bit of fruit, maybe 2-3 pieces a day. Some raw nuts, some raw seeds. There are classes that are around, I certainly know of a couple, where you can go and actually learn how to do raw food prep. Or go online and look up raw food prep. And I'd get her on a raw food diet or as much raw as possible. Absolutely no processed sugar, breads, cookies, cakes, donuts, pastas, none of that. I would check her digestive system. Because if she has acid reflux or heartburn, the stomach is not breaking proteins into something called amino acids. The amino acid, for example, the amino acid tryptophan becomes serotonin in the brain. Tyrosine becomes dopamine, and glutamine becomes GABA. Now, it's a lot of chemistry there, but GABA is a neurotransmitter that suppresses pain. And so a lot of times when I have chronic pain patients come to my office, I have to get their digestive system working so they start producing their own natural painkillers. It's a tough call because it seems to be genetic, and it's an autoimmune condition. So we got to get her on a really anti-inflammatory diet. And so I would probably have her write down everything she eats to start with and then kind of run from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's her brother actually, but all that.
Our brother, yeah. And then of course,
yeah.
absolutely get her on get him on Super Greens and Essential Source, because everyone should be taking that. And I find a lot of people it helps their pain tremendously. Okay.
Right.
Thanks so much. Appreciate
Okay.
it. Folks, I'm Dr. Joe Esposito. If you have a question, 844-44-Dr. Joe, which also rings through to my office when I'm not on the air. Jesse, tell me about your coconut problems.
Well, everybody says eat coconut for everything under the sun. I know people that swear by it, but it makes me stop breathing. So what can I do?
Okay. Some people have allergies to nuts, of course. So a couple of things
No, that's the only one, just coconut.
That's just the only one. Have you tried organic?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
It poses right up.
Okay. Well, the good news is that you can get your nutrients from other foods. You don't have to do coconuts for anything. Now, why would you want to? What specifically you're thinking about with coconut?
I've got joint issues. I've got asthma. I get headaches. I've got, you name it, I've got it.
Okay.
I've had surgeries for several things. I do a lot of natural and holistic type
Sure.
cures because I respond better to them.
Yeah, good.
And everybody wants coconut.
Yep. Well, do everything else but the coconut. I mean, that's the whole thing. Stay away from the cooked foods. Stay away from the animal products. Stay away from the sugars. Again, Super Green's an essential source. I know I sound like a broken record, but that's such an easy, quick start. Do you have acid reflux or heartburn?
No?
Good. That's one less thing we have to worry about then. Check the nervous system. So do everything except the things that include coconut, and you'll be fine. A lot of people, you don't have to do coconut. It's just part of the protocol, not the protocol. Okay?
Okay.
So don't worry about it, Jess.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Okay. Folks, if you have a question, 844-44 Dr. Joe. Again, my website is drjoeesposito.com. We archive radio shows there. You can order supplements, Super Greens, Essential Source, my books. If you haven't read my books, folks, great, good stuff out there. It's kind of fun. I was I walked into a cafe the other day, and somebody was sitting there reading my book, and I thought, that's just kind of cool, you know? My website, again, like I said, drjoeesposito.com. You can send me questions through the website. Like me on Facebook. Send me a question through Facebook. We send out lots of cool information there, too. Got to get hip with this social media, kids. If you're not on there, you got to do it. But again, 844-44 Dr. Joe, if you have a question to get on the air, and if not, that rings through to my office when I'm not on the air. Hey, listen, when we come back, we're going to teach you some tricks to boost your brain power. Everybody needs that. A couple of tricks to boost your brain power. Hey, tell your friends about the show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Glad you could be here. We're talking today about things that you can do to make your brain work better. We're going to give you a few tricks to boost your brain and your memory power. Because as we get older, we got a lot more stuff in our brain. It's a little harder. I think an old joke. I think it was from Dennis the Menace or something. You know, he said that somebody was complaining. He was complaining about school, and he said, "Well, Dad, when you were in school, there was a lot less history to remember." And so it's true. As we get older, we have a lot more stuff to remember, and so our brain can kind of get filled up, and the brain tries to decide what's important and what's not. But there are some things you can do to actually make your brain work better. And I talked briefly just a little bit ago about this, and I got to cover this, I think, on every show, that your stomach's job is to take proteins and break them into amino acids. The amino acid tryptophan combines with vitamin B6 and creates a chemical called 5-HTP. Again, don't get lost in the chemistry. 5-HTP becomes serotonin. Serotonin is a chemical in your brain that helps you focus. And so if you have ADD, ADHD, anxiety, depression, I've never, in 3+ decades of practice, and I practice almost every day, found somebody who had an emotional component of their health care that didn't have a digestive component that was undiagnosed or untreated, I should say. And so many times the stomach will spasm. Like you've heard of spastic colon, you can get a spastic stomach. And if the stomach spasms, it's not going to break the proteins into amino acids properly. So the food passes from your stomach into your small intestine, partially digested, and there it essentially rots. And when it rots, that's when you get that real stinky gas or the bloating. That's the food rotting in your colon. And so many times we have to take the stomach and massage it or pull it down away from the diaphragm to get the digestive system to work. So acid reflux, heartburn, burping, gas, bloating, these are all signs that you may have this spastic, the stomach pushed up against the diaphragm. If it's bad enough, it's called a hiatal hernia. And it's physical. So many times people try to treat it chemically when the problem is physical. We need to pull the stomach away from the diaphragm. Tyrosine becomes dopamine, tryptophan becomes serotonin, and glutamine becomes GABA, which helps suppress your pain. So as a chiropractor, I treat a lot of pain patients. And many times we can work on their spine, but we also have to work on what they're doing that may be increasing the pain. And one of the things we do is try to get the GABA production up and get them on an anti-inflammatory diet. So we put them on things like Dr. Joe's Super Greens, Dr. Joe's Essential Source, which I consider the ultimate supplements. I mean, of course, I'm a little biased there, but I take them every day, at least once a day, and I think you should too. And most people, after taking them for a couple of days, go, wow, I really see a difference. I have more energy. I sleep better. I go to the bathroom better. A patient come in the other day and say, Doc, does this stuff make you go to the bathroom? I said, why? They said, well, I was constipated for years, and when I started taking this, I'm going to the bathroom twice a day now. I said, good. That's normal. Food in should mean food out. So we got to get the digestive system working to get the brain working. And so that's why it's really important you understand that. You got to use your brain. And so one of the things I want to offer you is I want to offer you hundreds of hours of radio shows. and videos at no charge. Go to my website, drjoeesposito.com, and watch the shows. Listen to the radio shows. Watch the videos, because that's going to stimulate your brain. And you got to use it or lose it. You got to challenge your mind, and it'll actually increase the number of connections in your brain, which will help boost your memory. There's so much research now that's similar to muscles that get out of shape when they're not being used. Your brain needs to be challenged on a regular basis in order for it to work properly. Remember, well, let me talk about languages. Okay, when it comes to languages, when you're a baby, there's one part of your brain that controls all your languages. So whether you speak 1 language, 2 languages, 5 languages, 10 languages. As you get older, if you don't have a second language, the body produces a second part of the brain or secondary center for your languages. That's why it's so much easier for children to learn a second language, because they're using the same part of the brain that their primary language is being used in. So the brain is really a fascinating thing, and it can change its shape and its function. It's called plasticity. The brain has plasticity, and it can actually reshape itself. So again, one part of the brain for children, 2 parts of the brain for adults, more work for adults. That's why if you have a kid, it's really a good idea to expose them to languages. All right, we're going to take another question. We're going to take this one off Facebook. Ahmad, you have a question for me?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Today's question is from Rita.
Rita.
She says, "Hi, Dr. Joe. Kudos to you and your show and the knowledge that you impart. I have not severe but very persistent tendinitis. I was researching today as to the cause and maybe some relief, and I want to get your thoughts on the situation. Thank you so very much. God bless."
Okay. Now, she had said psoriasis or tendinitis?
Tendinitis.
Tendinitis. Okay. So what happens is the joints are connected. Tendons attach muscles to bones, and ligaments attach bones to bones. I remember TM, like Transcendental Meditation. Tendons are muscles. And so if she's got a lot of tendinitis, what that can be caused by is the muscles are spasmed because the bones are out of place, pulling on the connection between the muscle and the bone. So many times when I see tendinitis, whether it's the elbow, the wrist, or anywhere, we got to get the bones put back in place. Then we have to bring down the swelling. And so ice is going to be something that's going to be very helpful. But if you don't put the bones back in place, we can do injections, we can do cortisone, we can do surgeries. But if we don't bring the inflammation down, we got problems. And so that's why you got to get an anti-inflammatory diet. So it really fits in with what we do perfectly at our offices. We fix the physical, and then we treat the chemical as well. So you got to address the physical. I think that's probably where your problem's going to be. And you have another question, I see.
Yes.
You're waving your hands at me crazily through the window here.
Like an air traffic controller.
Yes.
So this one is from Jason. He says, "Hi, Dr. Joe. I have psoriasis and joint pain in my elbows. Do you have any suggestions?"
Okay, that's a good question. Psoriasis, you may have something called psoriatic arthritis. There's different types of arthritis, and psoriatic arthritis is one type. And what happens is psoriatic arthritis is an autoimmune condition. The body attacks itself. So whenever I see psoriasis and joint pain together, I think psoriatic arthritis. May not be the case, but I always think that. So a couple of things you want to do. Number one is you got to calm down your immune system. Your immune system is kind of a little out of whack. And so we do that with foods, of course, the same foods I always recommend, and alkalizing the system. And then there are certain herbs that are what's called tonics. And what a tonic is, it helps stabilize the body. If the body needs stimulation, it'll stimulate. If it needs to suppress, it suppresses. So something like withenia extract or withenia is a wonderful herb that'll help stabilize that. When it comes to psoriasis on the skin, we got to cut out 2 things. We got to cut out all dairy and all wheat. Now, when I say wheat, breads, cookies, cakes, donuts, pastas, and I find whenever I see a skin condition, we get them off the dairy and the wheat, which then takes the stress off the liver, and the liver is directly linked to skin conditions. When I get them off the dairy and the wheat, of course, chiropractic care is part of every treatment that I look at. If I can treat the patient, I will. And many times that calms everything down. So if we can calm down the immune system, and the dairy and the wheat are causing the immune system to go crazy anyway, many times that solves the problem. Folks, got to go to a break. If you have a question, 844-44-Dr. Joe. You can like me on Facebook. You can send questions to me through the website, drjoeesposito.com, where you can get Super Greens, Essential Source. You can also order Super Greens, Essential Source, my books, other products on Amazon. So if you have an Amazon account, it might be a little easier for you. But my website, drjoeesposito.com, great source of information. And we have tons of archive radio shows, and that's my present to you to help stimulate your brain. Hey, tell your friends about the show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate you taking time out of your day. We're talking today about things that you do that hurt your brain. And we do a lot of things all day, every day. And years ago, I played football and hockey, and we wore pads and helmets. But we weren't nearly as cautious as the kids are today. So a lot of folks, if you're older and you played these sports, chances are you caused some physical trauma to the brain. And concussion, of course, is a big thing. Now, if you get hit and you get dizzy, if you get lightheaded, if you see stars, chances are you got a concussion. But also, I want you to think about this. How many of you have ever been in a car accident? Raise your hands. A lot of you. Your brain floats inside your skull. And so your brain is floating in what's called cerebrospinal fluid. And if you get hit in a car accident, your head snaps because you have a seatbelt on, your body is locked in, but your head isn't. And as your head, let's say you get hit from the rear, your head snaps backwards, your brain slams into the front of your skull. Then your head snaps forward, slamming your brain into the back of the skull. It's called a contre-coup injury. In French, contre-coup means back and forth. And your brain can slam into your skull, and that can cause some real serious brain damage. So you can physically hurt your brain as well. So if you have that and you have problems like that, you want to get that checked. And this ties nicely into our next caller, who is Todd. Todd, tell us about your situation.
Yes, Dr. Joe. Suffer from severe migraines for about 16 years. I've been hospitalized 2 times.
Wow.
Because they've just been more or less a grade 10 or more.
Wow.
And I've been in the hospital for about a week or more for them. And the only thing that they can, just do for me is just medicate me. Within the last month, they've just been so severe and just gotten to the point to where now I'm suffering severe motion sickness with vomiting and not knowing when that's going to stop. And this is as bad as it's been.
Wow.
And I just want to know what type of natural things that I can do to try to help with these migraines.
Sure. Well, the migraines, it's telling you something's wrong, obviously, and that we talked about brain issues, so you tied in beautifully with the show topic tonight. What you can do is, number one, is you got to look at your diet, because certain foods will trigger headaches. For example, I can't eat chocolate. If I eat chocolate, I get a headache. So what I'll ask you to do, Todd, is start writing down everything you eat. And if you want to go to my website, I have a form you could use. If not, just use a piece of paper. It doesn't matter.
I do know my triggers.
Okay.
They're onions, chocolate, and cinnamon.
Okay.
And I stay away from those items religiously. My wife reads food packaging.
Good.
And anytime we go out to eat or to relatives or friends' homes for dinner or meals, they pretty much know what I can and cannot eat.
Yeah, it's smart you know the trigger, so that's really good. And write it down anyway, just to see if you have a headache without a trigger, you might have some weird, bizarre trigger. Who knows? Like monosodium glutamate, for example. Chinese food can trigger it. Artificial sweetener. So if you have a piece of gum, artificial sweeteners in over 6,000 products. Aspartame, number one side effect is headaches. So that's what I'm saying. If you're avoiding your triggers and you're still having headaches, start writing things down and see if there's something else that might trigger it. And then also think, when is it? Am I under artificial lighting? Because fluorescent lighting is not pure light. It's actually strobing. It strobes so fast you can't see it. But those things can cause migraines. I've had many patients where we just can't put them in a fluorescent light. They come into the office, we've got to shut the lights off in the room and just have a little, light from the hallway coming in. The other thing you want to consider is pinched nerves in the neck. And this is by far the most common issue.
Okay.
Because you have nerves in your neck that go up into your skull, and also you have something called the basovertebral artery. It's the artery that runs along inside the bones, actually, in your neck that supplies your brain. So if the bones in the neck move out of place, you can be cutting off the blood supply, cutting off oxygen to the brain, hypoxia, and that can trigger the headaches as well.
Okay.
So I would consider getting your neck checked absolutely positively to see if there's any damage to the neck, and then make sure you're hydrated. Dehydration could be a cause too, and that's why if you start writing them down, you might say, wow, you're right, I didn't drink water that day, and that triggered it. And then once it starts, as you know, it snowballs.
Okay.
Yeah, because I suffer from headaches too, from old sports injuries. And I found out chocolate was one of my triggers. And darn it, I like chocolate, but I can't eat it. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, try the diet diary, and I would definitely recommend getting your neck checked because I had a patient one time, 22 years, And he came in after 2 or 3 visits. He was crying. I said, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong?" He says, "I didn't have a headache today. For the first time in 22 years, I didn't have a headache. Thank you."
Wow.
So it could be a physical problem that's been totally overlooked, and I get that a lot. So try that too.
All right. Thank you, Dr.
All right,
J.
Todd, thanks so much. So, folks, a lot of times when it comes to healthcare problems, it could be physical, not chemical. We talked about the contra coup injury. We talked about with Todd how it could be pinched nerves causing the headaches. It could be a digestive problem. If you have acid reflux or heartburn, if you have constipation, that could lead to headaches. I guess I got to do a whole show on headaches, don't I? Guess I got to put that in my wheelhouse there and do a whole show just on headaches and so many different causes. And I can handle a lot of pain, but headaches and sore throats are the two I just don't like. And when I get my headaches, I know right away what it is. I know what caused it. It's my atlas, my top bone has been out of place. I got damaged a real long time ago. And I can remember having headaches as a kid even, but I played a lot of stupid sports. And we talked about we didn't have all the equipment that we have today. But gosh, as much as I love sports and I support you to do that, I would strongly ask you to consider or reconsider football and soccer, because soccer is a lot of head injuries. And I see a lot of concussions coming out of soccer injuries. Now, if you're going to play soccer, you have to promise me you're not going to use your head. And sometimes that's tough, I know. But soccer's fine otherwise, but I just don't want those head injuries, because it's sad, because in a contra coup injury where the skull slams into the brain, that can cause damage to the brain and could be linked to later on Alzheimer's or even Parkinson's, because the brain was damaged and over the years it just got weaker and weaker. You want to try building new pathways in the brain. So you want to do something that you've never done before. And that could be anything. Now, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, and left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. Most of us all day, every day, use one side of the body. I mean, think about it. You brush your teeth, you zip your fly, you start your car, you work your mouse. And so I'm right-handed, so I would stimulate the left side of my brain more than my right side. So my brain can actually short circuit. My brain is designed to be integrated, not segregated. And what we do all day, every day is we segregate our brain. We're all using one side more than the other. So a little trick I want you to consider is something called a cross crawl. And it's in my new book. It's called Prescription for Extreme Health. And I have a chapter on this because it's that important. And again, as a chiropractor, I want to make sure you have good brain health. I want to make sure you have good chemistry and good physical brain health. So that's why I recommend things like super greens, an essential source, and staying away from the bad foods and eating the right food. So it's in the new book is really good. If you haven't read it, you should. It's called Prescription for Extreme Health, and it's on my website, drjoeesposito.com. And so is the super greens and essential source. But what I want you to do is march right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg. I'm running out of time here. But it's called the cross crawl. You could look it up online or get my book. Even better, just get my book. Folks, got to run. If you want to get my books, my super greens, drjoeesposito.com. Also on Amazon. If you have an Amazon account, it might be a little easier to do that. If you have questions, send them to me through the website. And 844-44-Dr. Joe rings through to my office when I'm not on the air. Hey, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.